Hey folks, I'm Melhorn. In this video, we're going to go over some of the differences between anchoring for catfish and drifting for them. Well folks, when you're fishing from a boat, there's only really two ways to fish. You're either anchored down, sitting still, or you're moving. Now that anchoring is kind of obvious. You put an anchor out, two anchors sometimes three. You lock the boat in place and you sit there and wait for fish to come to your baits. Now with drifting, it's a little bit different. And drifting is a broad-ranging term that covers a lot of types of fishing. So I'll tell you real quickly some of the different things. One, the basic drifting is drifting with the wind or drifting with the current, depending on whether you're in a river or fishing on a lake. Basically with these types of fishing, you're not using a motor. You can use a motor, a trolling motor, to move the boat along very slowly. This is technically trolling, but this is where the terms kind of get minced and chopped up together. The bottom line is you're either sitting still or you're moving. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both techniques. And I'm going to go over some of the different times that I like to use each of them to catch fish. Now, one of the advantages of anchoring is that you're able to sit in a small area, a relatively small area, and fish from there. This comes in very handy when fish are tight to structure. Maybe it be a channel edge, a rock pile, a brush pile, something like that. And you have to do what I would call precision fishing. You're having to work a small area and you're trying to put those baits in there. Drifting's not as effective. You're going to be over and gone past it in a few minutes. Anchoring comes in very handy when you've got a small area to work. Now, anchoring is a tool that I use a lot of times when we have water releases from the dam, because most of the areas that I fish are on reservoirs and not major rivers. Our water releases are determined by when they're releasing water from the hydroelectric dam. So a lot of times we like to get anchored up in areas that are holding fish, whether it be humps, dips, where cuts come in from shallow coves, that type thing. And that's a time we like to anchor up. Have the water come on ideally, fish start feeding, boom, you can pick them off. Another time I really like to anchor up is when I'm fishing for flatheads at night and when I'm fishing for fish that are on the bank at night, whether that be channels, blues, or flatheads. Being able to anchor up, put baits up within several feet of the bank, the best way to do that is to do it anchored up. It's very hard to do this drifting. You can try to do it with planer boards, but for most lakes and reservoirs, the edges of these impoundments and rivers have blowdowns, trees that are laid in them. When you're dragging baits through there with planer boards, you're going to get hung up and it's going to be a big pain, especially at night. So this is another place where I like to anchor up, put lines out, and fish from a fixed position. Now, as for drifting, trolling, whatever you want to call it, covering water, that is a technique that I love to do when I need to cover water, when fish are scattered, when fish are everywhere, when they are across a big, vast area. This happens at different times of the year. It's also a good technique for figuring out where fish are. When I roll onto a new lake or a new river, usually, generally speaking, the first thing I'm going to do is go drift. I'm going to go cover some water to see what's going on that lake, to kind of try to dial in what's happening with the bite. It's a very good technique to figure out where the fish are. And again, there are certain times, for whatever reasons, maybe it's pre-spawn fish or it's before they're nesting, are out scattered around feeding. Maybe it's after the spawn and they're out moving around, reestablishing themselves, chasing bait school. Drifting can be a very effective tool. It's a little bit of skill involved in it. You can basically go out there and just float with the wind, but speed becomes your enemy. I always say that you can't drift too slow, but you can go too fast. So being able to control your boat speed is very important. I've got several videos on how to do this, and I'll probably do some more down the road, but using drift socks, using a trolling motor, all of these are ways that you have to slow a boat down to keep that bait in the target area for as long as you can. And drift socks, trolling motors are all ways that you control your speed. The wind, the current, those are the things that are moving you and driving your boat. And, you know, just being able to control that speed, that's going to be the critical skill you're going to need to learn if you're going to do any drift fishing. Now, which technique is better? Neither one of them. I'll be honest with you. I have fished tournaments for a long time. I have fun fished for a long time. I have guided. I have shot YouTube videos, and there is no best technique. They both have their applications and the times to use them. So don't get locked into the mentality of, I just need to drift, or I just need to anchor, or if you want to be a diverse fisherman, if you want to catch fish in all kinds of conditions, you need to work on doing both techniques and learning how to do them to the best of your ability and your skill and the time that you have to put on the water, because both techniques have times when they come into play and when they are effective. And so don't get locked up on, I used to be that way when I fished tournaments. I'd see somebody win drifting and I'm like, man, that's all I need to do is go drift now. Next tournament, they won anchored. I'd be out drifting. So once you start using these and catching fish the different ways, the different tactics, YouTube will see that it's going to depend on what's working with the fish and where the fish are as to which technique is the best one to go with. Now, I will say this. If you are trying to put numbers of fish in a boat, drifting, trolling is probably your best bet for putting overall numbers of fish in the boat. Mainly because you're gonna, especially if you're on a lake that you can do a long drift on, and I'm talking like you can get on Santee Cooper and drift 4 miles. Some of the big lakes and reservoirs, you can do the same. If you're looking for numbers, that is probably your best way to put numbers of fish in the boat. If you're trying to get some for a fish fry, that's probably your best bet. Because you're going to be covering all kinds of water. You catch some big ones, you'll catch some small ones, you'll have a lot of diversity in what you're catching. But when you're trying to pinpoint fish, saying that you're trying to work that brush pile or that rock pile that's out there, or that one steep ledge on the outside of that point where there's always some fish hanging on, that's when your anchoring is probably going to be your better technique to go with. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're going to like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know, just watch them both. They're both good.